Hey, welcome, HR Tampa folks. Come on in. I'm sure we have some people joining. Say hi, introduce yourself in the chat. Good to see y'all. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into this. Pizza, bacon, puppies. If you know, you know, okay? So thank you again for having me. I'm very excited to be presenting this topic, which I have titled Unmasking Autism, Perspective on Hiring Practices and Bringing the Whole Self to Work. For me, this was a chance to highlight autistic voices and get folks involved on topics that I'm passionate about and that they're passionate about as well. So I'm Scott Fontechia. I'm with the Learning Academy at USF. We are a transition and employment service provider located at the USF Tampa campus. I really hope you enjoy this. Believe it or not, this is a recording of me. So real-time Scott, he's in the audience. Hey, real-time Scott, nice to see you. Real-time Scott's gonna help y'all if you got questions. I encourage you to be active in the chat. I'm happy to talk and engage, but sit back and enjoy some of these interviews. And the folks that'll be joining me today are my good friends, Jason, Emily, and Chris. So thanks again for joining me. Today I have with me Jason. And so Jason, if you would, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jason Katz. I've been with the Learning Academy for 3 years now. And so far, I'm very happy with Scott and the rest of the team and the support they have given.
We appreciate that. Can you tell me a little bit about your education and work experience background?
I have a master's degree in human resource management from New School University and a bachelor's degree from SUNY Albany in communications and rhetoric. Just up until recently, I was in human resources doing consulting work, both independent consulting and working for some consulting firms. But, it didn't pan out in the last few years. I'd say the last 10 years, it's been kind of difficult for me to find good HR jobs, something stable. And I kind of attribute my difficulties to my autism diagnosis, which I got like 6 years ago.
What impact did it have on you to get the diagnosis late in life?
See, my brother and my sister-in-law are both psychologists, and they recommended that I get tested, and I was like all for it. They'll say nothing's wrong with me. They just say, I'm, kind of shy and, have some social difficulties, but turned out that I do have what's called PDD-NOS, which is a form of autism. All the labels have changed since, but it's basically Asperger's without certain symptoms. There is a huge difference between high functioning and low functioning people with autism, and Asperger's tends to be very high functioning.
There's somewhat of an umbrella of autism now, where in the new DSM, several diagnoses have been absorbed into that umbrella. Everyone who has Asperger's has autism, but not everyone who has autism has Asperger's, kind of like that. So I believe you have also, in the last few years, been not only maintaining your HR credentials, but adding to what you have.
Well, yeah, I received my SHRM CP, Certified Professional Designation, and I also received the SHRM People Analytics certification. Unlike most HR people, I'm not really a people social butterfly kind of person.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of affected me in, my interviewing and my interactions with HR people around me. And my background in HR has been very technical in a lot of ways. For the most part, I've been implementing HR and payroll systems and, analyzing organizations, making suggestions, building the system, reviewing it, and testing and deploying it.
And so you had the technical skills, like you said, have always been there, and where you felt like the gap might be in maybe the people skills. And so I believe it's when you transitioned to Florida that it became more of a challenge to find new roles in the HR community. What do you think might have happened and why it was such a challenge to break into HR again?
When I first moved from New York, New Jersey area, it was I was kind of devastated because I thought things were going to be different here, and I'd sort of be sought after, and there would be a lot of opportunities because there's not too many people with HRIS credentials. And when I came down here, I guess there wasn't much of a need for people with HRIS credentials.
How long would you say that you persisted in searching for an HR job down here?
It's about 10 years, but I had some gig work that I did, 3 months here, 6 months there, but it never quite worked out. Again, I attribute it to the autism, especially early on. After I was diagnosed, I was a little bit devastated by it. Felt I didn't feel complete, or I felt kind of lacking compared to other people. And over time, I've come to understand it as just different,
Emily, it's great to see you again. If you would, could you please introduce yourself?
Okay, so my name's Emily Holden. I'm 25 years old. I currently work at Victory Christian Academy in the preschool department. I've always worked with kids. I'm more comfortable with kids, and I just love them. I currently am very happy where I am, but I would like to soon figure out how to become an ESL teacher. That's my ultimate goal. So right now I'm just working to get the experience, get a feel of the workplace, how it feels to be in the school system and all of that.
Love it. Yeah, and if I remember correctly, you actually wanted to teach Korean students, correct?
Yes, I can speak basic Korean at this point. I'm still learning Korean, but I can speak basic now.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I remember when you met with the folks at USF, they were pretty blown away because there wasn't a lot of programs in Korea for folks with disabilities.
Right.
And they really were impressed with what you were doing. So Emily, what I want you to do is I want you to think back before you were working at Victory, and think about that process of finding a job and looking for a job. What did that job search process look like for you?
Oh man, well, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted. I just didn't know how to communicate it. But it did take a bit of digging around. I kind of had an idea, but I didn't know how to get it out. But once we found it, it was like, yep, this is it.
Yeah. Do you remember, how did you usually look for like a job opening?
My mom would send me links through like LinkedIn or Indeed and all of that. And I would take a look, see if I wanted to try it or not. Kind of look at the profile, try to see if they have a website, try to look at the reviews and all of that.
Gotcha. So you did your homework, your research on these places.
Yes.
Good. When you do your research, things that make you want to work for a company or things that would make you not want to work somewhere.
Right.
What are you looking for when you're doing your research?
I look for more like a community, like all my coworkers, like we got each other's back, we help one another, and it's just like it's a safe place for the kids too, where there's rules and regulation. We have a schedule. If somebody needs help, there'll be somebody available to step up and help wherever you need help with. It's just like it's that people working together saying we got this, we have each other's back.
Okay. It sounds like you really look for, I like that you said community. So you look for, a group of people that are invested in each other, that care about each other, and it's kind of like a melting pot.
Right. I need stability. I need reliability. I need to know who to go to if I'm in trouble or I'm done with a task. I need to know what's next.
When you're on the job and you're going through, training and learning new things, what helps you learn new tasks?
I am a visual and kinesthetic learner, so you have to show me how it's done first, and then I'll come in behind and try to repeat what you just showed me. So I'm more of a see and do it again kind of person. See if I can do it myself, or if I get it kind of wrong, see if you can teach me how to do it do it right. I mean, can I know I will make mistakes, and I'm probably not. Sometimes I'll say something that I'm not aware I'm saying.
One thing that tends to be pretty common in autistic individuals is a real love for honesty and directness. And I imagine when it comes to feedback, perhaps that's what you want, is direct, honest feedback.
Well, knowing my personality, I am a very straightforward person. So you need to tell me things black and white, concrete. Just tell me as it is. Don't tell me through theories or abstract and I won't understand.
Sure. So thinking about, where you worked and you got on and you're training, and you're in a new place, did you ever request accommodations or feel like that was something that you needed to be successful?
I think the only thing I requested was to be told if there's a fire alarm going off, because I don't do well with fire alarms, even though. So one thing I did for myself, I told my director this, is I'll carry earplugs that I can just pull out and put in my ears and help the kids get out where they need to go. And as long as I have those earplugs in, I feel like I can block most of the noise. I can do my job without freaking out. Though probably after it, I probably will, knowing myself. But most of the time, my director has been really good because she understands how autism works. She also has a kid with autism.
Do you feel like it helps to have a supervisor who is empathetic and understands that?
I think it's a really big plus, because it's like they know what we go through. They can connect with us better, even if they don't have the disability in themselves. It's like they understand, they know the struggle. So it just makes us more open.
Mhm.
'Cause they know what we go through, and it makes them more willing to help us get through it. Like, you can do this. I know I've seen it before. I can help you. Here's a way that you can do it. It's just that support that we need.
Sure. And when it comes to accommodations, there are a lot of myths around accommodations. So many times employers are a little bit scared of the word accommodations, and they think it might be really tricky, it might be really expensive or difficult to implement.
I'm one of those people that, okay, if this is not going to work, can I come up with a compromise? Can we meet in the middle? It's just reasonable accommodation is probably the big keyword that they need to know. So I think employers they don't need to be afraid. They need to communicate.
One thing about people with Asperger's or autism is they don't assume anything. And neurotypicals tend to basically, they don't make assumptions. They expect you to know what to do.
Like you mentioned, with autism being impacting the brain and being a neurodiversity, it can all the brain processes can be, whether it's memory or recall or inferences, what to do. So a lot of that of, I need clarity or direction or whatever it might be, or things to be black and white, concrete. Sometimes abstract processes can be very, very tough. So yeah, having clear directions is often actually an accommodation that a lot of folks access who are on the spectrum.
So my name is Chris. I work at CARD, which is the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. We're based at the Tampa campus of USF, and I am on the autism spectrum, and I've been working in this position for almost 4 years.
So are there any accommodations that you have previously accessed or currently accessed that you feel like have been really helpful?
I have been doing this job for so long. I'm not sure anymore what's an accommodation or what's just like
it's been normalized.
Yeah.
Well, and I think something to mention on that is that so many accommodations at the workplace are so normalized that they don't feel like accommodations anymore. Well, excellent. All right, I want to take you back a little bit and to think about the time maybe before you were working here, when you were a job seeker and you were looking for work. How did you go about looking for open positions?
I was just out of my previous employment, which was a national service job with the length of 1 year. I knew that I wanted an interesting job that was not too far away. Spent a lot of time on the job site for this campus. I was scrolling down. I just saw this place, program assistant for Center for Autism. And I was like, wow, that looks interesting. And also they might understand me. I had the interview and I thought that went well.
You did bring up the interview. That's another part that I'm curious about when it comes to the interview. What was your experience like with the interview? And I'm curious if you could talk about maybe something that helped for the interview, or if there was something that was particularly challenging about the interview.
The job description mentioned that a familiarity with FileMaker computer program was a requirement. I did not have that, so I had to admit that in the interview. That was a bit tough because I was saying, please hire me.
And if I could
And
put you on pause for 1 second, because that is an amazing point that you've made. The job descriptions themselves sometimes have things listed as a requirement when there's actually some flexibility to that. A big piece of advice I would put out there based on what you've said is revisiting those job descriptions, because there are some folks who, when they're in that application process, they're very careful about the details on that job description. And I think other people in your shoes may not have even applied if they had never heard of that before, because they might have thought literally this is required and I don't fit the bill. So I think that's a great point you bring up.
I think that a really helpful part of my pitch for myself was that I had spent the most of 2015 in the congressional office of Congresswoman Katz in Tampa. And that work was basically the same as this. It was a lot of taking phone calls and answering emails and helping people with programs and resources. And I was able to learn the program in that job. So I reasoned that I would be able to learn the program in this job. Without the experience of that, I don't think I would have been confident enough to apply for this job.
Sure. And I think built into that comment that you've made is probably a fairly strong endorsement for gaining experience and providing opportunities. I think folks on the spectrum should be pretty diligent whenever possible to look for opportunities and to gain experience. But I would also encourage employers to make those opportunities available for folks. So as you go through, the interview portion over here, did you have any interactions with HR here at USF?
On the day of the interview, no. After I was hired on my first day, I had a lot of interactions with a few people who it was probably the HR at some level in this vast bureaucracy that we have.
And do you feel like if you had some kind of concern or problem today or in real time, would you know who to contact at HR?
Yes, I think that if she couldn't answer the question or handle the problem, she would probably be able to tell me who to talk to.
I am curious if you have advice or recommendations for HR professionals or any professionals watching this of what they can do in their workspaces to help with inclusivity and encouraging more neurodiverse candidates to apply and work there.
Well, if they're within the 14 counties that CARD serves, then they get training from CARD about what is autism, and they can also get training from you, from TLA.
It's true. Shameless plug right there.
Yes. So if they're in another part of Florida, they can get training from their local CARD office.
I think I should mention it's no cost training from CARD.
Oh yes, all the training from CARD and from TLA, I think, is free. So you don't have to pay. There's no money. So that is another reason why you should do it. I think that our training makes a difference. I think that the people who do the training know what they're talking about, and people learn about autism. and it's it's very possible to employ someone with autism, and you can be proactive and do your research, and we can help you if you want to take the step of employing someone with autism or having someone with autism under your supervision when you're the HR person. You don't have to do it like all at once, I guess. I guess they're like, you take one step, then another step, and there are resources. So it's possible. And I think the biggest recommendation would be open to training.
I think that that's a great point about that openness to learn. I think there's so many businesses that have those goals for professional development, that have the ability to bring in speakers or to host speakers, and perhaps via pandemic, we've gotten it to be even more accessible to have these remote opportunities where employers and employees can attend from multiple locations, from the comfort of their homes. They can bring in professionals where at one point maybe travel and housing might have been a cost that they couldn't take on. One topic that I am very curious about, that I've been asking folks about, it has to do with bringing your whole self to work. And there is a concept out there in the autism community called masking. And I'm curious what masking maybe means to you.
It's not a concept that I think about in that way very often. Not being transparent about being on the autism spectrum and trying to behave like someone who is not on the autism spectrum at work to fit in more. I don't think that's something I have to deal with very much here, because everyone here knows that I'm on the autism spectrum. Autism is what we do. Basically been myself, and I've managed to last in this position for basically for almost 4 years. So I guess I'm doing something right. But I'm sure that some people who are not as fortunate as me definitely do have to think about that, because their employers are not as educated, or they're not as accepting.
It's a very tough subject. I mean, it's, as a human being, you don't walk around with a sign on you that says, "Hi, I'm autistic." Although I see t-shirts. Just getting along today in society, you know how to be courteous and kind. So, some social norms like saying hello or looking people in the eye, those are hard to do no matter what you're doing. With the masking, you can try to do it, and quite frankly, one thing that I know we've talked about this before was that people with autism are terrible liars.
Yeah, they tend to be.
And that's what masking is lying. And so you try to walk around as normal, but eventually when you're relaxed and around people, that's when the autism really shows. When you're masking, you come off as somewhat strange.
Sure.
Stranger.
Sure.
Than you do when you're unmasked.
Okay. Well, and I would imagine for, you know, a good portion of your life, not knowing, you know, you're on the spectrum, just not being aware of that. Did it feel like you had to put on an act to be that quote unquote normal?
I tried very hard to be normal. I knew I wasn't normal, you know, for my entire life, but I've I try to fake it till you make it kind of thing, and it socially it didn't work too well. I mean, I still had the experiences. Probably I had more normal experiences than most people on the spectrum have had, but I never quite fit in. You know,
There's a concept of masking in the autistic community, and I'm curious to get your take on what masking is.
Masking is more common for female autistic people. Masking is like a way to hide like who we are, because we're either in a situation where, you know, we're growing up in an environment where people don't understand us, people treat us like outcasts, and we're the odd ones out, especially with a lot of the older generation. And I have experienced this myself, but it's like we're trying to fit in a world where we can't quite fit in. We'll always have that one tick that maybe we'll let loose, where we might accidentally show it, or we're just trying to be like everybody else when that's not realistic. That's just society pressuring us to be something we're not.
To follow your lead, our society, our community has built social roles and social norms that
Right.
a lot of times the autistic community may not understand or may not think that it's meaningful, or they don't participate in. And so fitting in, you know, can be a challenge.
I also heard this really amazing quote from preschool from Dr. Seuss.
Mhm.
It says, why fit in when you were born to stand out? Even people, neurotypical people, try to fit in a place where they're not supposed to fit in. They're supposed to stand out. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to be something we're not supposed to. From my point of view, I really wish my fellow autistic friends wouldn't have to do the masking. I wish there were more people that would tell them it's okay to be different. You are who you are. You can't change it. Be proud that you can make a difference in the world. You can see things that most people can't see. You have the power to change the world. You don't need to mask anything.
When you think about the concept, it's a pretty big concept in HR. I feel like I've seen it a lot at conferences, and seen a lot of folks talking about it. But the concept of bringing your whole self to work, what would that mean to you, and how would you be able to do that? What would need to be in place at a company, or, you know, from an HR perspective, to allow someone on the spectrum to actually bring them whole selves to work?
as an HR professional, almost by definition, you have to keep a professional distance. For somebody on the spectrum, it's kind of hard to do, but it's a matter of education and exposure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you talk about equity and you talk about inclusion. There has to be some real inclusion, not just mouth service.
Gotcha. Like it's performative.
Right. I would encourage people who are on the spectrum to say that they're on the spectrum and try to bring their authentic self to work. But On the flip side, the employers have to be receptive. Absolutely.
Do you think that there is a workplace culture, like the unwritten rules, the social norms within the field of HR that makes it difficult for there to be HR employees on the spectrum?
You know, I'll have to be honest. I mean, I'm a little disappointed in the HR world in that, you know, it talks about inclusion and it talks about equity,
Mhm.
and it doesn't always practice what it preaches. People in HR are usually seen as hypersocial people. And when you're not a people person, you don't often fit in. You stand out like a sore thumb, and you can be smart as heck, but the fact that you're not seen as a go-getter or a social animal, it's kind of it works against you.
So is this the part where we put the ball in our audience's court and say, you know, be introspective, take a look at your organization, you know, how inclusive, how much equity, how neurodiverse are you really? You know, does neurodivergence really have a place there? Is that kind of where we're at, you think?
Well, sure. I mean, you took the ball and you brought it there. I mean, being on the spectrum versus neurotypicals, which for all of you, it's normal people. It's kind of like being a minority. It is a minority. Any workplace can have someone who's neurodiverse. I mean, I can't think of a position that wouldn't be appropriate for someone who's neurodiverse. It's just a question of the sensitivity and the comfortability. There's no reason why we can't do anything. The people who are autistic also are given jobs that are generally lower paid and, you know, more menial than most other people. You know, people look at us like we have some mental deficiency or unintelligent or stupid, or that whole ball of wax is nonsense.
It is nonsense. I love this conversation, Jason. I absolutely love it. I am curious. Do you have, you know, a piece of advice or a nugget of wisdom or something you'd like to pass along to our HR audience?
From one HR person to another, I mean, be sensitive to people out there. You don't know what kind of stuff is going on with a person. They might be autistic, they might have depression, they might have some other kind of form of mental illness, and that doesn't make them less capable than anyone else. Before you write somebody off because they didn't give a good interview or their resume is spotty, you know, try to search for their strengths. Don't always expect the strengths to come out in an interview, because it could be there. It's just not present. It's not showing.
So to wrap things up, let's say folks attending, they're doing their due diligence. They are doing training. They're obviously involved because they're listening to presentations like this. They're putting into place policies in their workplaces, and now they're at the point where they are bringing on a worker who's on the spectrum. And as you know, every single person on the spectrum is entirely different. What would be your piece of advice for that HR person or that supervisor who has that new worker on the spectrum, to make that new hire a success?
Understand that the training may take longer than you want it to. It could take longer than they want it to. Me learning this job took longer than anybody wanted. But if you have a job with like 3 different things that have to be done every day, and you have a program, a computer program that you have to learn, your way of teaching that may have worked for like 50 years is not going to work, maybe, or maybe it will, and that's great, but it's maybe not. The person is going to be in an unfamiliar environment that will hopefully become familiar, but the person may be overwhelmed at first, even though they apply for the job, they wanted the job, and patience. And
and to use your example, and maybe translate it a little bit, there's that front end investment where there might be more time and effort that goes into the onboarding, the training. But I think that what we obviously see with you, Chris, and what a lot of people will obviously come into contact with, is that front end investment pays off with a long-term employee. So that long-term employee, an employee who cares and gets the job done and wants to do it right. And a lot of times that's why that front end investment can be so heavy, and maybe take longer than both parties anticipate. If you were to have any recommendations for folks who work in HR, human resources, who work in different workplaces,
Right.
what kind of recommendations would you pass along to make, a workplace more inclusive, or to help them better understand neurodiversity at work?
Well, one of the things, like what you're doing, you're putting on a presentation and asking me, somebody with the disability, all these questions. That makes me rather happy that these companies are taking their time to help people like me, like try to understand, like, okay, what they can do, what are their options, where are their resources? Because Florida is a big autism community. We have a lot of resources to help those, help autistic people and their family. And I think the workplace should jump in on that too. It's like, we also have a workplace for you guys, and this will be helpful. And it's just that kind of thing that they're learning about us. And I mean, I'm one of those people that if they don't understand, from my point of view, I'll try to help them understand. But I just like how they're trying to reach out and learn more.
Autism doesn't fit in a box. You can't say, autism is this, that, or the other for each person. You can't look out into the world and go, look, there's an autistic person. That's just not how it works. And so when things are complex or convoluted, or you actually have to put in the time and the effort, sometimes that's challenging for folks. And that's our time. Oh my goodness, it went so quickly. I wish it could last forever. I could talk about this at length. If you would like to talk about this at length, please do reach out. My contact info is on this slide. You can take a little screenshot, boom, you got it forever. If you've got questions, hey, ask questions. I like questions. Let's take some questions. Okay, well, real time, Scott, you're still in the chat, right? Help these folks out and have a great day, and take some of these things into consideration. I think they're all very important, valid, real points, great information. And again, thank you for having me. Enjoy the rest of the conference and Expo, and let's kick COVID in the butt, man. Let's get rid of this thing. Thanks.